Hi everyone, this is Jermaine Elliott. I'm an EdTech Link Fellow with the Digital Harbor Foundation in Baltimore, Maryland. Today I would like to share some of my thoughts and reflections about where I think education is now and the direction in which we're moving. And as I begin to reflect and think about the things that, kind of stand as challenges or maybe even benefits in the educational system, I think a lot about where we were 15 years ago, 25 years ago, even a decade ago. And I think a lot about how much has changed and how education is constantly shifting. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm just a first year teacher. I just finished my second year of teaching in Baltimore City schools, and now I'm transitioning into my second year as the fall is upon us. But one of the main things that I think about is how right now, especially in Baltimore City schools, I think there's a lot of emphasis on student centered instruction. Now, if you go to any Baltimore City school, you will find one classroom where there are students kind of centered in the middle of learning. And when you think about kind of how things kind of work under that ideology, I think a lot has changed even since my own upbringing. I remember in most of my classes in middle and high school, we sat in rows and we regurgitated a lot of information. Now we're kind of moving away from that system in most school settings, and we do a lot of group collaboration where the students are taking charge and facilitating, the learning that's occurring in their classrooms. And I think that's a lot more meaningful and purposeful in the way that education is kind of conducted. The second tenet that I would like to discuss is technology. As an EdTech fellow, one of my main responsibilities is to learn about a lot of the current technologies that are occurring and how these technologies can integrate themselves or manifest themselves in classrooms in Baltimore City. And so one of the things that I think about is the idea of access and privilege. One of the things that gets me really fired up is thinking about being at a STEM school and the access and privileges my students have, and thinking about the access and privileges that students in other communities have, and how there's a very large discrepancy. And that doesn't settle well with me. And I think the reason it doesn't settle well with me is that we've become too comfortable with the idea that resources aren't distributed equally and it's just the way that it is. And regardless of what I think there needs to be a very large cultural shift. A few weeks ago, I went to the ISTE conference, the International Society for Technology and Education. And at that conference, we learned a lot about ways to integrate technology in the classrooms, but we also learned that technology is not just fancy equipment, a cool web tool or application. Technology is a cultural mindset. It's about it's in really thinking about like how you view the way that you obtain information and like the things that you use to obtain that information as well. And I think that's very important because as technology continues to exponentially grow, I think that the problem with that is like so many schools are being left behind. And when we think about like access and privileges, we have a gap. There's a digital divide between the schools that can afford these type of technologies in the classroom and kind of the mindsets that those kids have versus the kids that don't and don't have those same mindsets or access to technology. And in thinking about doing that, I think that what's going to happen in the near future, the next 10, 15 years, especially, because it's already happening now and has manifested itself into our culture, I think that as technology continues to grow, the divide and gap is going to continue to widen to the point where it's going to turn into a social justice issue on a very like mainstream like level. I think that what I'm starting to realize is that not only do my students not have access to the same technologies that other kids do, I've also learned that as this is happening, my students are put at a disadvantage for the workforce. They're not being prepared for the type of jobs that our society demands in this global world. And so, in thinking about doing that, I think as we continue to expand on technology and what it means like to be in the classroom, I think that a lot of the students are going to continue to fall behind to the point where they can't catch up. And that's what I'm most concerned about. So that's one important shift that I think that's going to need to occur is a cultural shift in mindset about how we perceive technology and how it's used in a societal standpoint, but also more importantly within that context and the educational like perspective and like in the classroom really. And the other thing that I want to talk about before I cut this short is I want to talk about a need for cultural shifts from education as a holistic approach. So we're not thinking about just K through 12 education, we're also thinking about higher ed as well. Are we preparing our students for college? Are we preparing our students beyond college? Are we preparing our students to work in technological workforce areas? Are we preparing them to be global citizens connected through technology? And I think these are fundamental questions that we must ask ourselves. And I think these questions have started to manifest themselves now. And as we move toward the future, they will be real life issues that we will be forced to tackle, not just in classrooms within those four brick walls, outside of that. The stakeholders will then have to take charge. We're talking about policymakers, politicians, doctors, lawyers, everyone, because we are educating a generation right now that is not necessarily well equipped to handle the level of technology that is being demanded of them. These are my deepest thoughts and reflections on where education is now and where it's going to move, the kind of the trajectory that it's on. Please stay posted for more information about that. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.